Resuming debate, the honourable member for Timmins, James Bay.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's a great honour, as always, to rise in this House and speak on the for the people of Timmins, James Bay. It's very powerful that we're having this discussion today on trying to move forward with dental care legislation and protection for Canadian low renters in the midst of constant obstruction from both the Conservatives and the Bloc. I will be sharing my time today with the member for Edmonton Strathcona. So today, as we're discussing dental care, let's put it in context for people back home. We will be voting this afternoon on the New Democrat motion to take on greedflation, to actually shine a spotlight into the massive level of profits that are being made as ordinary working class Canadians, senior citizens, can't pay their grocery bills. And this morning, Galen Weston suddenly had the moment on the road to Damascus and announced, well, he wasn't completely willing to stop the price gouging, but he was going to put a price freeze on all his no-frills products. Nice, Galen. It's nice to know that when the New Democrats start putting pressure on, the big grocery giants are starting to jump. And we're not done with it, because, you know, what we see with inflation is that inflation has been hitting in two key areas. One is obviously at the grocery stores and others at the pump. And those are the two sectors that have had unprecedented levels of profits over the last year. So it is inexcusable for giants like Galen Weston and Big Oil to claim that they are just responding to the crisis that's been caused by the Ukrainian war and inflation, when what we're seeing is greedflation. Because whenever the price of the pump has been dropping, we've been seeing that inflationary pressures have dropped. Internationally, we see efforts at the EU, California, the United Nations pushing for a windfall tax to say this upper level of profit, this unprecedented level of profit coming out of the pocketbooks of people who can't afford to pay it, and it should be paid back. So that's something that's happening at the international level. We haven't seen this government go anywhere near that. But it'll be interesting today to see whether or not the Conservatives and the Liberals will stand with us and actually taking greedflation on. And I mention that, Madam Speaker, because it's really important to frame how the New Democrats have come into this Parliament and how we've been proceeding. When the Prime Minister called that completely unnecessary election last summer, in the summer of 2021, we went door to door and we listened to people. And we met family after family after family whose concern was that their children couldn't get their dental care fixed. We met seniors who couldn't afford to get proper teeth work done. And we made a promise that if the Canadian people set up the cards in Parliament and we had a minority Parliament, we would come back in and we would fight for a national dental care program. We ran on that and we're delivering on that. We are very focused on that. And I think it's very telling, because it's obviously got my Conservative friends' backs up about this, is we're actually delivering. We said that we were going to push for a doubling of the GST tax credit, because we need to get some money back into the pockets of citizens. And we saw the Conservatives light their hair on fire. Then they flip-flopped, because how would they go home to their constituents and not say that they believed that they should be entitled to having money come back? But what they've been doing, they have a very different strategy than us. We're very focused on what we're doing. We announce what we're doing. We work on it. It's like siege warfare, I got to say, with the Liberals, dragging them, kicking and screaming sometimes to do the right thing. But you can do that in a minority Parliament if you're focused. So we said that we would get the dental care provisions in place, that we would double the GST tax credit, that we would get support for low-income renters because they are unable to pay the bills at this increasing time of insecurity. And the Conservatives, for their part, God love them, They love to jump down rabbit holes of conspiracy to get people arguing about things that are completely inconsequential. I'd like to talk, obviously, I couldn't have this conversation about the new shadow critic for infrastructure. Now, at a time when the issue of infrastructure and housing is the #1 issue in the land, she's demanding an investigation into Pfizer because she saw some crazy right-wing politician on YouTube making allegations. And so that's what the Conservative leaders, new infrastructure critics, saying. I remember when she was going on about the so-called Nuremberg Code, and it took the very wise member from Parry Sound, who I have a lot of respect for, to have to publicly say, quote, being offered a vaccine that prevents serious illness and our government's COVID response to COVID-19 are not the same as being tortured in a Nazi concentration camp. He had to send that against one of his own members. And I mention that, Madam Speaker, because the politics of disinformation is about getting people upset so that they're not focused on what matters. And what matters right now are concrete solutions to addressing the growing financial gaps and insecurities. So we see, I mean, if you want to talk disinformation, the front face of the Conservative movement in Canada right now, Danielle Smith, I mean, oh my God, where to begin? You know, we find out now that she's been promoting pro-Russian, pro-Putin separatist propaganda. That's unacceptable. When we see the horrific death rates and torture and killing and rapes happening in Ukraine, and yet she says that those who didn't want to wear a mask were the most discriminated against people in the history of Canada. We need to see all leaders in this country standing up against Putin, because the economic devastation that's happening around the world is impacting us here. And we also, from a basic human rights point of view, need to stay focused. But I mention it because this is the politics of disinformation that the Conservatives are opting for to cover for the fact that they are not delivering real results for people. So when we came in and said we were going to double the GST tax credit, the Conservative leader had this term. He said, oh, if you give money to working class people or senior citizens so that they can help pay their bills, that money will be somehow vaporized, was the term he used. Vaporized is a magical Conservative economic term, kind of like cryptocurrency. And if we're talking about what got vaporized, how about the $1 trillion in crypto savings that disappeared after the Conservative Party leader went and told people to invest their savings in cryptocurrency? $1 trillion. That's vaporization. What New Democrats are doing is delivering. So today, what we're seeing is a million reasons that Conservatives are telling ordinary Canadians that they shouldn't have dental care, that it's not necessary. This bill today will affect 500,000 children who do not have access to dental care. That's an enormous amount of people who deserve. These children deserve this. That we see 50% of low-income Canadians who have no dental care services, and only 1/3 of Quebecers who have dental care, private insurance. And what this means is, to anyone who's had a child who needs their teeth fixed, it is an incredible pressure. And I know, talking to families about how they try and find ways to get dental care. So what this bill will do this year is we'll give 2 payments to families, low-income families with children under 12. That's not the full solution. That is the interim step that's necessary in order to get this program in place. This was our supply agreement with the Liberals. Now, it must be said, just because we have a supply agreement with the Liberals doesn't mean that we get along with the Liberals. This is about pushing these guys, because I got to tell you, pushing Liberals to actually do something is like wrestling with Teletubbies. Just try and even get something to grip on with a Liberal is difficult at the best of times. But in this minority parliament, we found where it needed, and we knew it was on dental care. And so this year, we've pushed them. We've actually pushed these Teletubbies. We're going to get that money to low-income families, but that's only the beginning. We need this national program, so senior citizens have a right to it, so ordinary working-class people have a right to it. Madam Speaker, we need to move on this. So while my colleagues on the other side are going to jump down the rabbit holes of conspiracy and Utah nut jobbery, we will stay focused on getting kids their dental care, on getting money to working class and seniors, and to take on the grocery giants and take on greedflation. I'll be here all week. I'm ready to take questions. Thank you.